Peter Dupaz is an Australian serial killer, currently serving 3 life sentences without parole for murder. He has a very significant criminal history involving serious violent offenses. With his violent criminal history spanning more than 3 decades, and with every release from prison, he has been known to commit further charges against women with increasing levels of violence. On the 3rd of October 1968, at the age of 15, Dupaz was still attending school at the time. He visited his next-door neighbor, requesting to borrow a knife for the purpose of peeling vegetables. He was then arrested after he had stabbed the woman in the face, neck, and hand as she tried to fight off his attack. He later told police he couldn't help himself, and he didn't know why he began to attack the woman in the first place. He was placed on 18 months probation and admitted to the Larundel Psychiatric Hospital for evaluation. He was released after 2 weeks and treated as an outpatient. On 25th of July 1974, Dupaz was sentenced to 9 years imprisonment with a minimum period of 5 years for an attack on a married woman in her own home. He had broken into the victim's house and threatened her with a knife before tying her up and assaulting her. The sentencing judge described the offense as one of the worst crimes that could be imagined. In 1979, approximately 2 months after his release from prison, Dupaz attacked 4 other women over a 10-day period. On the 28th of February 1980, he received a 5-year prison sentence for 3 charges including malicious wounding, assault with intent to rob, and indecent assault. He was then released from prison in February 1985. Approximately 1 month later, he sexually assaulted another 21-year-old woman on a beach. After appearing from his car, Dupaz followed the woman and attacked her, holding her down to the ground with knife point before committing the crime. On the 28th of June 1985, he was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment for that crime. He was released after only serving 7 years of his sentence. Dupaz was then moved into a house in Melbourne after his release from prison. 19th of April 2000, Nicole Patterson's body is found by her friend. She had went to visit her and realized that her front door was unlocked and found her body on the floor. Police investigations of the crime revealed Patterson had a 9 a.m. appointment with a new client by the name of Malcolm. As noted in her personal diary, she also had a phone number. The number was traced to an Indian student studying at La Trobe University named Harry. Police learned Dupaz had approached Harry with an offering of laboring work. On the 22nd of April 1999, police arrested Dupaz at midday in a hotel in Thomastown and charged him with the murder of Patterson later that day. Telephone records revealed Dupaz had made 3 prior telephone calls to Patterson to arrange a counseling session to treat depression and gambling addiction. The first from a public telephone approximately 6 weeks before her murder. Over the course of the next 6 weeks, Dupaz made calls to Patterson in an attempt to establish her vulnerability. Dupaz later told police he canceled his appointment with Patterson after being told by her his problem was something he was able to work through on his own. Police also noticed scratches on Dupaz's face, hand, consistent with the recent struggle. He claimed the scratches had occurred while he was working in his backyard shed, and a piece of wood hit him while he was using a lathe. The police knew he didn't own one, but he changed his story and told them that he was actually walking by a sharp piece of wood and it scratched him. A police search of Dupaz's home revealed blood-stained clothing, tape similar to the one found at the crime scene, a ski mask, newspaper clippings of detailing her murder, and a paper also containing her advertisement for her therapies. On the 22nd of August 2000, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole for her murder. After police obtained his DNA, they were able to link him to 2 other murders. He was found guilty and was given another life sentence for each of those murders. Dupaz is still the prime suspect for 3 other murders, however police haven't been able to charge him and confirm them. He's currently serving all of his life sentences in the Maximum Security Protection Unit of Port Phillip Correctional Center and will spend the rest of his life in prison. John Wayne Glover. John Wayne Glover was born on 26 November 1932. He is an English-Australian serial killer convicted of the murder of 7 women. He was originally from a working-class family in England. Glover was convicted on many petty crimes dating back to 1947 for stealing clothing and handbags. He left school at 14. He ended up serving in the British Army, but was ejected when these crimes were discovered that he was stealing. He later immigrated to Australia in 1956. On the 11th of January 1989, 84-year-old Margaret Todhunter was walking down Hale Road. She was seen by Glover, and after parking his car, he walked up behind her. He punched her and stole the contents of her purse, including $209. On the 1st of March, 1989, as Glover left the local bar, he saw 82-year-old Gwendolyn walking down the street. Glover returned to his car, put a hammer under his belt, and followed her to the entry foyer of her Military Road apartment building. As she went to open the front door, he hit her with the hammer on the back of her head. He then continued to strike her above the body and in her head. Several of her ribs were broken. He ended up fleeing the scene, and the police assumed it was a robbery gone wrong, and that the suspect didn't actually intend on committing murder. On the 9th of May 1989, Glover was walking down Military Road when he saw 84-year-old Lady Ashton walking towards him. She was on her way home to a nearby Raglan Street. Glover put on a pair of gloves and followed her into the foyer of her apartment, where he attacked her with his hammer. He then strangled her and left her with a purse containing $100. Glover headed for the local bar, where he commented to the workers that he hoped the sirens outside weren't because of another mugging gone wrong. At this point, the police concluded they were facing a serial killer. To date, all 3 victims were wealthy older women from the same area and were all assaulted or killed in the same manner before being robbed of their handbags. 4 more women were murdered in the same way, totaling 7 that John himself confessed to after being arrested. John Glover was attempting to commit suicide in the house of his last victim. However, police were able to get there in time, and they arrested him to send him to court to face his crimes. Glover was also guilty of many other assaults on elderly women. Most of his victims were old, vulnerable women in retirement homes or women that lived on their own. He was given 7 life sentences and was imprisoned at Lithgow Prison, where he was held in a maximum security prison cell until he committed suicide on the 10th of September 2005. He is still the main suspect in 6 other murders that will likely never be solved now. Ivan Milat. Ivan Milat was an Australian serial killer who was convicted of the backpacker murders in 1996. Milat is the son of a Croatian immigrant and an Australian-born woman. Milat is the 5th born of their 14 children, but by 17, he was already in a juvenile detention center for theft, and at 19 was involved in a shop break-in. In 1964, he was sentenced to 18 months for a break-and-enter, and a month after release, he was arrested for driving a stolen car and was sentenced to 2 years hard labor. In September 1967, age 23, he was sentenced to 3 years for theft. He was later charged with the abduction of 2 18-year-old hitchhikers. While awaiting trial, he was also involved in a string of robberies with some of his brothers before faking his own suicide and fleeing to New Zealand for over a year. The backpacker murders were a spate of serial killings that took place in New South Wales. The bodies of 7 missing young people, aged 19 to 22, were discovered partially buried in Belangolo State Forest. On the 26th of February 1994, police surveillance of the Malat house at Cinnabar Street, Eagle Vale commenced. Police learned that Malat had recently sold his silver Nissan Patrol four-wheel drive vehicle shortly after the discovery of the bodies of Clark and Walters. Police also confirmed that Malat had not been working on any of the days of the attacks, and acquaintances also told the police about Ivan Malat's obsession with weapons. Ivan Malat was arrested at his home on the 22nd of May 1994 on robbery and weapon charges related to the Onions attack, where he had robbed a man. 50 police officers surrounded the premises, including heavily armed officers from the SWAT team. Malat's home revealed various weapons, including a .22 caliber rifle and parts for a Ruger shotgun. There was also a Browning pistol and a Bowie knife. The shocking part was when they uncovered foreign currency, clothing, a tent, sleeping bags, camping equipment, and cameras belonging to several of his victims. On the 27th of July 1996, after 18 weeks of testimonies, a jury found Ivan Malat guilty of all of the murders. He was given a life sentence on each count without the possibility of parole. He was also convicted of the attempted murder, false imprisonment, and robbery of Paul Onions. He also received 6 years in jail time for that sentence. In 2001, following the opening of the High Risk Management Correction Center, also known as Supermax, at Goulburn Correctional Center, Ivan Malat was transferred from the maximum security section of the prison into one of its 45 new cells. After years of multiple escape attempts and self-harms, on the 22nd of October 2019, Ivan Malat died at 4:07 a.m. within the hospital wing at Long Bay Correctional Center. Ivan Malat's cause of death is yet to be determined. He died at 74 years old, and they believe he is responsible for many more murders than what he has been charged with. Most likely, they will never be solved.